Days could be numbered for a piece of Boston's waterfront history. Officials say the Northern Avenue Bridge is in danger of collapse into Fort Point Channel and has to be taken down. The question is, what happens next? Repairs and preservation, or a completely new bridge? Joining us to offer one perspective is our guest, the Executive Director of the Boston Preservation Alliance, Greg Gaylor. Thank you very much for being with us, Greg.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, just talk about the short term here, because if safety is an issue, there's the minimum that has to be done about that, I guess.
Right, and my understanding from the city, and we're in fairly decent communication with the city, is that's really their focus, and I think that's why people probably haven't heard a lot about what's going on, because they are really working with federal agencies like the Coast Guard and the Army Corps of Engineers, who directed the city to take care of something that should have been taken care of, honestly, many years ago. So the city really is focusing on an immediate issue, and my understanding is there is plan to have some action if they get approvals that they're trying to get through now in March, so just a few weeks away.
Well, this all overlaps with another debate about the transportation needs for this growing residential and job district here. And I've also heard people say that, having a lot of vehicular traffic on that bridge does not make sense, even if you put a brand new bridge.
That's correct, and I think there's a lot of information. I think a lot of things coincided at the same time between General Electric coming in the news about that and the report, the request from the Corps of Engineers and the Coast Guard to the city about the safety of the bridge and these concerns about transportation. They're all real and they're all sort of interconnected, but one doesn't necessarily solve the other. So I'm not a traffic engineer, but from my understanding, and if you just look at sort of the geometry down there, putting a whole host of cars over the Northern Avenue Bridge or a new bridge at that site doesn't solve the problem. And what we really see is the Northern Avenue Bridge, the historic bridge restored, will provide a much better route for bikes and pedestrians, which will help solve the problem in a certain degree. Just pushing more cars through is really not going to solve the traffic problems.
Well, putting up a low-cost, completely new bridge could still be, that could still be used by bikes and pedestrians, but it would be, giving up the history. Wouldn't keeping the history cost a whole lot more money?
Actually not. From the numbers we got from the city, and I should say that the city brought together a group of stakeholders last year. It was a diverse group of people, walking, pedestrian advocates, neighborhood groups. We were involved, harborfront people, et cetera, even some of the local businesses were part of it. And after looking at the numbers, preliminary numbers provided by the city, and all the things people would want out of a bridge, actually restoring the historic bridge was far from the most expensive option, was towards the bottom in terms of expense, and solved all the problems and preserves the history. So you can really have your cake and eat it too.
Explain why the history matters so much, because when I was a kid growing up, this was just another almost interchangeable piece of the industrial part of the city.
Well, I think that's sort of the point. And I too, remember a number of movable bridges around Boston and around the country, in fact. And there's so few left. This is what I like to call a rare survivor. There's so few left. Do we really want to erase from our past all of those aspects? This was an important industrial area of the city that's long forgotten. South Bay was once a bay, and there was a lot of boat traffic up and down there. The Seaport District was a major rail yard, and that's an important part of our history. But it's not only that. I think we live in a society now where we're so focused on our cell phones and our iPads that we've really lost touch with sort of the mechanical aspects of our lives. And what better way to do that than to make a place in the city that's functioning and exciting? We don't need to just think of this bridge as a rusty piece of junk like it's been for the past several decades. We have to think about what it was when it was new and what it could be in the future.
You said make a place. You're talking about placemaking here.
I am talking about placemaking. Imagine the bridge functioning well so it can move and open faster. So the bridge has been in such poor condition, the city has been really reluctant to push the bridge much. So when they opened it, it was very tentative and sort of hesitant. But imagine the bridge restored, repaired, reconstructed. We're not saying you have to save every bolt. But working and functioning well. And imagine actually seeing this thing. This is a 240-foot long piece of structure that swings open on a bunch of wheels. It's something that people don't understand. Imagine if perhaps we could change the structure so the bridge opens on a regular schedule, so every hour or something like that. Hey, I'll meet you after work for a glass of wine and we can watch the bridge open and close. It could be really an interesting place.
I can't help but think of the High Line in New York City, industrial history as a track to revitalization, but there's so much revitalization already happening at Fort Point Channel and the Seaport District. Do we need something more?
Well, I think we do. I mean, what has been one of the major criticisms for the Seaport District is it's relatively bland in terms of design and architecture, and while the city is working on enhancing that, this would be such a wonderful gateway from the old Boston to the new Boston to the Innovation District. And it also connects with the other part of the South Boston area, the Fort Point District, which we worked for over a decade to preserve, those old industrial warehouse buildings, which are now being very successfully used for businesses and residences. It's a perfect fit. It's really an icon of the city and of the neighborhood.
Well, we have a lot of other history in other parts of Boston as well. Anything in particular you see either troubling or promising that you think is worth bringing up?
No, I think that's a fair question. I mean, we regularly say that one of the reasons Boston is so successful, that businesses are coming here, people are moving downtown, the population is growing, is because of Boston's unique character. You can stand almost anywhere in the city and know you're here. But at some point we're going to kill the goose that lays the golden egg. We're certainly an organization that supports the evolution and growth and development of the city, but at some point do you go too far? We're hearing from a lot of the neighborhoods that there's a lot of concern about excessive change and that they're really losing their sense of character and their sense of place. So we're actually hosting an event tomorrow night, and we'd love for people to come at 6 o'clock at the bowling building in the old Ferdinand's Blue Store, which is now the school department headquarters. We have a scholar from Columbia University coming, Lance Freeman. We have a panel, and it's really an opportunity to start to talk about some of these issues in terms of neighborhood change. And one of the goals is to empower people. A lot of people feel like they don't know where to turn, they don't know where to go to express their concerns about their changes in the neighborhoods. And we hope this is the beginning of a dialogue because we are hearing about it from every neighborhood in the city.
It's very timely in Roxbury because, concerns about gentrification, the Dearborn School having been just torn down.
Right, and we were very active in those, and that's exactly the reason we're doing this, because the Dearborn is one example. I think people need to remember that, there was a time when Fenway Park almost got torn down, the theaters that are so successful up and down Washington Street almost got torn down, Old City Hall. These are all important structures in the Northern Avenue Bridge and buildings that are less popular and less well known. An old power substation in Roslindale Square is now being restored. There's a little old public bathroom, a comfort station that's being turned into a little bike kitchen shop with historic Boston. There's all sorts of exciting things happening and great opportunity throughout the city, and we don't want to lose those unique features.
Thank you very much for being with us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Greg Gaylor from the Boston Preservation Alliance. And we'll have more news in just a moment.